Welcome back to In the Mountains. Today I'm going to do a deep dive into the Harbor Freight Predator 2000 Super Quiet Inverter Generator. Here it is. I purchased this generator on December 26, 2020. And I've used it pretty much in the winter time as a power source to charge my power bank off grid. Most of the time, my solar panels have a pretty good charge and hold their power well. But in the winter months, when it is dark and there's not as much sun, luckily there is some today, I need a little extra juice to charge my batteries. So I use this Harbor Freight Predator, and I've used it since December of 2020. So it's just about 3 years old. Before I had this particular generator, I had two previous generators. The first Predator I had was actually a 2000 just like this one. It was running possibly bad fuel went through it, and I couldn't get it started again, so I returned it right away within the return window, and I got a 1500 watt Predator, which is the size below this. Now that engine is, I believe it is around 54, give or take, cc. Go ahead and correct me in the comments if you know exactly. But that engine is a little bit smaller than my MS311 chainsaw. Granted, it's a 4-cycle engine. The Predators are, and the chainsaw is a 2-cycle, so it revs a lot higher. But it's power-wise, it's very similar. So with the first generator, it quit running after a month. It was a 2000 just like this. Then I went and got a 1500 right thereafter. The 1500 was okay. It's a smaller version of this. So I didn't even get a full tank of gas through the Predator 1500, and it quit working. So then on December 26, 2020, I went and picked up this one. And I've had it ever since. Some things you need to know about this generator. First, here is probably the most important thing you need to hear. Make sure you're using good fuel. Small engines like this do not run well on low octane fuel that is old. Don't try to run old fuel in here, or it won't. A, it won't start right away. B, it'll probably misfire. C, it could clog the fuel lines. I only use 92 octane in this generator. So when I had this, when I initially got it, I ran it for a winter or so, and then something happened. It actually quit running. So in doing so, I realized it was probably a carburetor problem. So this is what I did. I ordered a separate carburetor. They're available on Amazon. The replacement carburetor, it's not exactly the same, but it fit on and worked just fine. I can put a link in the description. So what happened was this carburetor had some fuel go through it. It didn't like. It clogged up the needle valves on these things. It has two jets, I believe. And those two jets, one of them got clogged. One of them was for the idle. This thing would not idle. It was doing a big surge. Actually, first it wouldn't start. So instead of messing around with the carburetor, I bought a replacement on Amazon. I believe at the time it was about 40-50 bucks. I bolted a new one on. And it has worked pretty good ever since. So I will not put anything in this thing but high octane, 92 octane, or even better, 0 ethanol fuel. It's just what these things like. Another thing you need to do with these Predator 2000 generators is change the oil religiously, almost. Change the oil often. Every time I have changed the oil on this Predator generator, it has had small metal shavings in it. Every single time. They're very fine, but it does have them. So even more the reason to change the oil frequently. I use a full synthetic 10W30 oil in this machine. The price on the generator when I purchased it was $4.99. I had a discount coupon for $40. So out the door, this generator with tax was a little over $500. Now they have gone up the list price on this. The new version of the same model is $5.99. So I guess that's inflation. All right, specification wise, the Predator is a 79.7 cc engine. So just shy of 80 cc. It is a horizontal cylinder, 4-stroke overhead valve engine. It is made in China. The tank holds 1 gallon of petroleum fuel. I recommend using the highest octane you can get, 92 if you can, maybe 93, or even better, ethanol free. These engines do not like ethanol. It's bad for the carburetor jets and bad for the fuel lines. It holds 13 ounces of 10W30 oil. The oil that comes with these things, I would imagine, is subpar, just like the spark plug. So the spark plug, I ended up, one of the best modifications you can do, one of the best upgrades, I should say, is by putting a new spark plug in this unit. I used an NGK. I can put a link in the description so you know which one to get. It will make a difference in your performance. I noticed when I pulled the old spark plug out of this machine, it was, I believe the model of it was called Torch. I looked up the company. It is a Chinese company owned by the Chinese government. I went and got the NGK Japanese spark plug because the most important thing on this single cylinder engine is the spark, along with the fuel and the air mixture. So on a 25% load, that 1 gallon of fuel will last about 12 hours. Which in my experience, I usually run it at maybe a little over, in between a quarter load and a half load. And the tank does last a long time. This thing sips fuel. It is relatively quiet. And this can run up to 4,600 RPM. Let's fire this thing up and see how it goes. So to start, the Predator 2000, we want to make sure we got fuel. You'll notice on the fuel inlet, there's a very fine screen here to filter the fuel. You want to make sure you keep that in there. Do not take that out. It's extra filtering for your fuel. You want the cleanest fuel possible in here. Do not use contaminated fuel. Just use the highest quality fuel you can find. I cannot reiterate that enough. So when starting procedure, there is a vent on top of the cap. It has an on-off. We'll go ahead and open that vent up to the on position. Make sure the cap is secured onto the generator. Here you have a ground. That is where your ground wire would go, which would connect to a wire to a ground that runs into a solid ground. Next you have the ESC throttle on. I use this quite a bit. So when you start it, you want this to be in the off position. And then once it warms up, you can click it into the on position. And what the ESC on-off does is it keeps the engine from revving at a really high load and a high RPM unless the load dictates it. So if I have a light load on this generator, say I only plug in one thing that maybe draws 100 watts, and I put it on the ESC, it's going to rev really low and really quiet and save quite a bit of fuel. I recommend using that unless you're using something with a heavy load consistently. Next, you have a reset. I usually push that before I start it just to reset the system. You have 2 parallel outlets. That is to, actually, I believe you can run these generators together. So if you have another Predator 2000, you could hook them together. Also, there are the 2 120 volts plugs for regular household power. Pretty straightforward. You have a 12 volt plug. Now when you're running the 12 volt plug, it's not one I use very often. It comes with the actual plug that fits in there to run on 12 volt. You cannot use the ESC on the 12 volt option, so I am told. It's not a feature I've used. So I used it once or twice, so I haven't used it a lot. But you got to run that with the ESC off, so it will rev higher on 12 volts. So keep that in mind. There's a reset for the 12 volts as well. Then you have your indicator lights. You have your peak wattage, your overload, and your low oil, which is handy if low oil gets low. But if you keep an eye on it, it shouldn't. I haven't had an issue with that at all. All right, let's move to starting position. You have the start position here, the run position, and the off. It's just a simple dial. And that dial actually controls the fuel on-off. So when it's on stop, I believe that valve actually shuts the fuel off and shuts the generator off. So let's go ahead and start this thing up. I'm going to turn the ESC to the off position. I'm going to put the lever over here to start. I'm going to open the top vent on the gas, and we're going to see how we go here. Usually it takes me a few pulls. In this case it took 2. ESC, and you hear how it levels out. Pretty smooth running generator. I've got a fresh tank of fuel in it. And to shut it off, you just hit stop. So, yeah, it's an excellent running generator. It's been reliable for me, minus the carburetor issue that I had to deal with. So, an equivalent Honda is going to cost you well over $1,000. I believe it's the Honda 22 or the 2000. Pretty much the same size, weight, similar setup. I wouldn't quite call it an exact clone, but it's pretty close. And this thing is about half the price. If you're on a budget, which I know a lot of you are right now, I know times are tough with the inflation and the economy not being as great as it has been. This is a great option for those that don't want to spring for a Honda. Will the Honda last longer? Probably. I'm not going to deny that. But this, if you take care of it and put good fuel in it, it will last. It will do its job and provide you with the power you need. So, with that being said, let's take a look on the side panel here. To get the side cover off, to change the oil, and to access the engine, we take this cover off. And to take this cover off, you simply need to take these 3 top screws off, and this cover will pop off. Why don't we do that? Okay, so with a number 2 screwdriver, remove these 3 screws on the very top panel, and that will give you access to the engine. So, just a quick warning. These screw heads aren't the best I've ever seen in my life. In fact, I've had this cover off a few times, and I can honestly tell you that I did strip that one out, so it's a little bit wonky. So I took it out altogether. I do not recommend that to you. I do recommend that you use a number 2 screwdriver, and that you're careful not to strip these out, because they aren't the best. Even better, maybe find a better screw to replace them with, because you will get into this panel every time you change the oil. So now I've got those screws off. I'm going to pop this cover, and you can see what we got going on. We have our engine here. Okay, so we got the cover off of the engine. Let's take a look at it here. So here is the carburetor that is actually a replacement. And it was a little, some of the actual positioning of this top part, I believe it's the electric choke. could be mistaken. Correct me in the comments. But that was a little bit different. But everything, I was able to switch it over and to match it up. It was a couple bolts to get this carburetor off. This nut here. And one on the other side. And that did the trick. The oil fill is right here. To drain the oil, I always put it on like a bench or something, and I have a pan underneath it, and I simply take this out, and then I dump the oil out. And like I said, every single time I have dumped the oil out, I've seen metal shavings. So just to let you know, we look at the serial numbers here, we see several stars. Not sure what those are, but this is made in China. So, read that how you would like to. The air cleaner is here. Periodically check that to make sure that's good and clean. There's really not much maintenance you need to do. The spark plug you can get to from the top. There is a plastic cover here that pops out. There's a spark plug right there. I would highly recommend getting an NGK spark plug for this machine. It's just a better spark plug. So that is the Harbor Freight Predator 2000 generator. For a generator that costs $500 that can produce 2,000 watts of energy when you need it, that price is tough to beat. Will this last you a lifetime? Probably not. But can you get a lot of use out of it for a long period of time? Yes. If you change the oil frequently, even more often than it says, I would recommend it because the metal shavings. Run good fuel through it. If you run it under heavy loads, I would actually even pay more attention to maintenance. For a generator that cost me a little over $500 3 years ago, this machine has shown me that it is capable of being a reliable source of power for my off-grid life. So I wanted to demonstrate a cold start with this engine. Notice the ground is frosty. It's right around freezing. Let's see how many pulls it takes to get this engine fired. So there you see, 2 pulls, and it fired when it was ice cold outside. What is your experience with the Harbor Freight Predator 2000 generator? Let me know in the comments. Have you had any issues with yours? What have you had to repair? Has it been a great machine for you? Has it not? Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for joining me on In the Mountains, and I'll see you next time.